Follow, share, and subscribe to our channel to never miss a new video. Stay updated with all our latest stories and content.
The Wisdom Keeper. In a quiet village nestled between green hills and whispering rivers lived an elderly woman named Mei Lin. Her back was slightly hunched, her hair silver like moonlight, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of depth only years could carve. She was known as the Wisdom Keeper, not because she held any official title, but because the stories she carried were the soul of the village. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, children and adults alike would gather around her modest wooden porch. Mei Lin would begin, her voice soft yet steady, painting vivid pictures of ancient love, heartbreak, war, peace, and the quiet triumphs of the human spirit. There was one boy, Kian, who never missed a story. Orphaned at a young age and often feeling invisible, he found in Mei Lin's tales a mirror and a guide. She spoke of warriors who laid down their swords to protect a friend, of mothers who sang lullabies in the darkest caves, of farmers who forgave thieves and turned strangers into family. One day, the village was struck by a violent storm. Crops were destroyed, homes were damaged, and fear spread like wildfire. Panic threatened to tear the community apart, until Mei Lin, fragile and slow, stood up before the crowd. With a quiet strength, she reminded them of an old tale, one of her village that had once faced a flood and survived not through power, but unity. When hearts are aligned, she said, hands will follow. Inspired, Kian stepped forward. Though still young, he began organizing people, helping rebuild houses, distributing food, and offering comfort. Others followed. In the weeks that passed, the village healed, not only physically but emotionally. They weren't just surviving, they were growing stronger. Years later, long after Mei Lin had passed, Kian became known as a wise man himself. But when asked where his wisdom came from, he would simply smile and say, "From a woman who told me stories, and taught me that real strength is shared through compassion, passed from one heart to another." The echo of her voice, Funtipteo the Wisdom Keeper. Years passed. Seasons came and went like whispers in the wind. Kian, now a grown man, had built not only a new home for himself but a sanctuary for wisdom, a small library in the heart of the village. But this wasn't a library of books. It was a house of voices. On the walls hung tapestries, stitched with symbols from Mei Lin's tales. In the corners sat elders and children, not reading, but listening, speaking, remembering. Every full moon, the village would light lanterns and gather under the same stars that once watched over Mei Lin. Kian would take his place, not on a throne, but on a simple wooden stool where Mei Lin once sat, and there, with the same cadence and warmth she had once given him, he would tell the stories again. But this time, he added his own. He spoke of the storm they had survived together, of hands that once trembled, now holding others steady, of children who grew up kind because someone once made them believe kindness was power. And when the children asked him, "Were those stories real, Uncle Kian?" he would look at the fire and smile. "More real than you know," he'd say. "They built this village, they built us." One night, a little girl, curious and bright-eyed, tugged at his sleeve. "Will you live forever, Uncle Kian, like Mei Lin?" Kian chuckled softly. His eyes glistened with memory. "No one lives forever, my dear," he whispered, placing his hand over his heart. "But stories do. And if you listen closely and tell them with love, her voice and mine will echo in yours. That's how we live on." And as the night deepened, the wind carried the soft sound of laughter and storytelling through the trees. Some say, if you walk past that village on a moonlit night, you can still hear Mei Lin's voice, wrapped in the voice of every storyteller that came after. Part 4. Where Story, Nonyan Kochian Kweve. Many decades later, the village had changed. Roads were paved. Houses had roofs of tile instead of thatch. Children held tablets, and the sound of old radios had long been replaced by screens and machines. But in the center of it all, still stood the tree. Its trunk was now wide enough for 10 children to sit around, its branches curled like arms embracing the sky. It never bore fruit, just like Mei Lin had said. But its leaves shimmered golden in the late afternoon sun, and its roots ran deep into the earth, like the stories it once heard. A young woman named Lin, a filmmaker from the city, returned to the village one summer. She was Mei Lin's great-great-granddaughter, though she never met her. All she had was a single voice recording her father, kept hidden in a drawer, a voice telling an old tale about love, loss, and courage. She brought her camera, her questions, and a heart full of wonder. As she sat up under the tree, elders approached, children gathered curious, then someone began to speak, not her, an old man, then a woman, then a child. Each shared a story, passed from lips to ears, never written, never forgotten. Lynn didn't just record voices, she captured a living legacy. When she returned to the city, she created a documentary titled Where Stories Return, an unseen village, a forgotten storyteller, a tree that never bore fruit but gave shade to every soul who sat beneath it. The film moved thousands, then millions. But beyond the views, something deeper happened. People began asking their grandparents for stories. Communities gathered to listen again. In the noise of the modern world, they rediscovered the silence between words, the place where meaning lives. And far away in that quiet village, on a calm night with stars overhead, a breeze passed through the leaves of the old tree. And if you were there, really there, you might have heard a voice as soft as memory whisper, "Tell it again." The Wisdom Keeper, Chapter 5, The Spark Reborn, Nuguk Kiuk Chung Varv, Tia Lured of Dengthuk. Years passed. The film Ling created, Where Stories Return, had quietly rippled through cities, schools, and homes far from the quiet village. In the digital buzz of modern life, few paused for meaning, but those who did found themselves changed. One such person was Min, a young man from the city, raised by screens more than people. He stumbled upon Lin's documentary late one night, scrolling mindlessly through videos. Something about the image of the tree, the way an old woman's voice lingered after she finished speaking, stopped him. He didn't know why he watched it. He didn't know why he cried. But he did. And something inside him, something long dormant, stirred. That weekend, Min packed a small bag and took the earliest train to the village. He had no plan, no name to ask for, just a feeling. When he arrived, he found the tree. It was larger than in the film, quiet, timeless, waiting. Under its shade, children laughed, 2 elders sipped tea, and a teen was drawing a mural on a wall. He sat down. He didn't speak. He just listened. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, someone began to tell a story, not for clicks, not for views, but for the heart. And Min, for the first time, opened his. That night the village fire was lit. People gathered, just like before. A new face among them, a new voice ready to rise. Lin returned too, surprised to see Min there. She handed him an old leather notebook. "It was Mei Lin's," she said softly, "but it's empty." She said, "The last pages are for whoever chooses to keep the stories alive." Min opened the book, held the pen, and began to write. Long ago, in a place not so different from here, there was a voice. It spoke through time, through people. It healed the lost, and now it speaks through me. Because the Wisdom Keeper is not one person. It is every soul brave enough to listen and tell the story again. The Wisdom Keeper, Chapter 6, The Forgotten Ones. Nurjit Kiuk Jungyin Lubi Lang Quin. The city moved fast. Too fast. Concrete swallowed silence. Screens replaced faces. And time became something people borrowed but never owned. Somewhere in that city, a girl named Anne sat by her hospital bed. Her mother, once a schoolteacher, now lay quiet, her memories slipping further away each day. Alzheimer's, the doctor had said. She may not remember your name soon. But every evening Anne would whisper the same words her mother once told her as a child. "Do you remember the story of the tree that never bore fruit, but gave shade to everyone?" Her mother never replied. Until one night, she smiled. Just a flicker, a spark. That moment changed everything for Anne. She began collecting stories from elders in the hospital, forgotten teachers, war survivors, midwives, poets, all waiting to be heard. Their families no longer visited. Their voices unheard, but their memories were still alive. And started recording, writing, archiving. Then one day a video showed up in her inbox, Where Stories Return by Lin. She watched, then wept. And just like Min before her, she packed her bag. When Anne arrived at the village, the tree stood tall just as in the film. Min greeted her like an old friend, though they had never met. She didn't say much, just handed him a notebook, this one filled front to back with stories from forgotten people. Min read in silence. At the end of the last page, Anne had written, "Some stories aren't told because they were never asked, but silence does not mean emptiness, only waiting." That night, Min gave her a seed, one of many he had grown from the original tree. Plant this, he said, not in soil, but in someone's heart. Back in the city, Anne launched a project called The Listening Tree. A small bench in a public park, a sign, sit, speak, be heard. One by one, strangers began sharing their lives, not into phones, but into ears, eyes, hearts. Some cried, some laughed, some just sat, but they all left lighter, and the tree nearby, it didn't bloom, but under its shade, hundreds found something they didn't know they needed. A listener. Because sometimes to heal a world, you only need one person to ask, what's your story? The Wisdom Keeper Final Chapter. We are the Zukiik, Jinkoi, Jingchimtala Kochin. Years passed, the village thrived, not because it became larger, but because its roots had reached farther than anyone had imagined. In distant cities, by rivers and mountain paths, under train stations and in coffee shops, listening trees began to appear. Not all of them were real trees. Some were murals, benches, podcasts, community circles. But in each place, someone was listening, and someone was brave enough to speak. Lynn, now older, stood once more beneath the original tree, hair silvered, heart full. Min sat beside her, notebook in hand, surrounded by new storytellers, nurses, artists, engineers, farmers, teenagers, and, now a published author, held a small seed in her palm, about to pass it to a child who had never even heard of my Lynn, yet somehow already carried her spirit. And as the sky faded into stars, someone began, long ago, in a village not so different from this one. But this time the story didn't end, because now it belonged to all of them. Each one a wisdom keeper in their own right, not to preserve the past, but to plant meaning in the